Welcome to Just Relationships, the show that offers you concrete ways to make your relationships better. Whether it's your boss, your spouse, your children, or your friends, the quality of your relationships in life directly affects how you feel about yourself and the success you achieve. Your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer, a psychotherapist, telecoach, author, and seminar leader, will interview top experts to help you learn to manage this essential part of your life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer.
Greetings to you. If you were present last week, you know that I was interviewing Dr. Marilyn Simmons Bowe, who wrote a wonderful book called Motivation by the Mile, about her own personal story of being raised in the Bahamas, very, very, very poor, and who is now a PhD social psychologist, not social psychologist exactly, expert in social emotional learning, a coach, an author, and someone who was able to take her own life and what she did in her own life and interpret it to the world so that we can all learn the wonderful aspects of becoming your own person, becoming who you are. So welcome back, Dr. Marilyn Simmons Bowe.
Thank you so much, Dr. Duffy. It's great to be back. And thank you for your warm, kind words and your introduction.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And we ended last week's show with me complimenting you on your use of metaphors. And we looked at how people learn. We learn through story. And metaphors are visuals. They're ways of teaching where we can see something in our mind's eye and make that comparison to something that's more abstract. And I have learned through my studies that the more metaphors people use, the more intelligent they are. So there is a lot of intelligence in using metaphors. I don't know how I picked this up, but I love using almost words like poetry. Like last week when I without even thinking, I said, explore the new fertile continent as the early Americans did, /exploit. And you picked up the etymology of that, EX as in explode, to move out. And the difference between creating versus breaking. And sometimes we do have to break to create, right? We have to break old molds, old beliefs, old patterns of behavior to become more novel and unique and creative ourselves. So I just have such a rapport with you, and I want to just make sure that people know what we're talking about here, which is how to self-motivate. Let me just explain. Dr. Marilyn Simmons Bowe's book is a beautiful cocktail-looking book with it's a photography book with words. And Dr. Marilyn grew up in a very, very poor in the Bahamas and became athletic as a relatively young woman, your early 20s, and but was always academically inclined. And the old bootstrap, pulling herself up by her bootstraps through her not only fervor and passion for education, but her sense of community and wanting to help others as she helped herself, and who she is today, living in Atlanta and being an emotional learning empowerment coach. So can you just add to what I said so people can know you better, Dr. Marilyn?
Absolutely, Dr. Duffy. Thank you so much. I was not supposed to amount to much by society's standards. At a very early age, I could have chosen to give into that and remain in that mold, or I could have chosen a different path. And so I decided to choose the path of education. I didn't have electricity nor running water in the little shack that's depicted in my book, but the library did. And it had what I didn't even know at the time. I didn't even know the word carpet. All I knew was there was cloth on this floor. I'm like, why is there cloth on the floor? I was a third grader. And the librarian said to me, she said, it's called carpet. And then she introduced me to a book about a magic carpet. And I started exploring the Arabian Nights series. And then I started exploring adventure series from young kids in England and roaming the moors, etc. And that's how I realized that there was something bigger inside of me that I should unlock. It was not an easy journey, and this is why I don't do it alone. Sure, I could, as I said last week, I could go and be selfish and just try to get, it's all about the money. But I figured as many people as I can empower along the way, then that makes all of us better, all of us richer. And you mentioned about metaphors. I always found a way from an early age, probably being raised British, because I was born a British citizen before we became independent. But the British have a way with words. Of course, they directly inherited that from the Romans. And it came down to how do we use words not only to empower, but to assist? Because not only to empower ourselves, but to assist others. So I would play on words, and I did Latin in high school because I had a choice between PE typing or Latin. And they said, you should go into typing because you're a girl. But I did Latin because I was thinking about being a scientist, which I eventually did become. In my first career, I was a pharmaceutical chemist. And so all of those things, I just knew that there were so many, and there's still so many kids like me all over the world who can benefit from the passion and realize that it's not about being an influencer or getting a sponsorship or something. It's about what you can do. And as you mentioned, Dr. Duffy, the cycle of humanity around you, community, what you can do within your community so that everybody moves forward.
Dr. Marilyn Simmons Bowe, wow. Many blessings on that librarian. Who introduced the book, The Magic Carpet to you. We don't even realize how much we help others by these seemingly small acts.
Yes.
And how she translated your shock to find cloth on a floor and say that's called a carpet, and introduce you to the magic carpet. And then you travel the world in books, in your books. It's just awesome. Just awesome. I'm so touched by your story. And you and I share the same love of etymology and words and word roots. Your books take you anywhere.
Yes.
Your books take you anywhere. And for you, your book, Motivation by the Mile, Inspiration for Every Day, keeping on your cocktail table or your coffee table is a way of exploring the world, because you show pictures, your photographs that you have taken all over the world, and mostly when you were running. Is that it?
Yes. 95% of the pictures in the book were taken while running. Yes.
That's extraordinary. It's such a multi-level, rich learning to be a long-distance runner, and then to be an author, and then to be a photographer, and to stop and be caught up in the beauty of the world, and to find words to describe it that connect with yourself, where you are in life, where you want to be, and where you want to help others be. So that's extraordinary. So I want to ask you, in your work as a social emotional empowerment coach, the whole idea of the social and the emotional empowerment, how do you actually coach people in this way?
I start with my instrument that I developed. I developed an instrument that measures 96 emotional dispositions. My instrument is based on work originally done in Germany by Reinhard Peckrun. And he was the foundational research for my PhD, because I said last week, I knew that I wanted to do work about the three main parts of the brain. the thinking part, cerebrum, the feeling part, amygdala, and the survival part, the cerebellum, the back of the brain. And so when I found his work, I knew that that was the foundation that I needed. So my coaching starts with giving the assessment, and the assessment helps to determine, it's a simple 32-item assessment, and each statement is just a simple statement. I get excited about learning new things, and it's strongly agree, strongly disagree, Likert scale. I take those numbers 1 through 5, I crunch them in an algorithm that I've developed because each statement is coded, and this is how they're coded. It's coded for 4 neurological domains: cognitive, how we think; affective, how we feel; motivational, what drives us; and physical/physiological, what physiological manifestations we get. Do we get queasy when we're nervous? Do we get flushed with envy? Stuff like that. Then there are 8 discrete achievement emotions. We have 5 negative: anger, anxiety, hopelessness, boredom, and shame; 3 positive: joy, hope, and pride. 4 times 8. Then we have 3 achievement domains that we focus on neurologically. We're either going to be great at achieving something before an event. Yeah, I've got this. I'm going into this knowing I've got it. We're fully confident. Or during an event, we need to do a self-check and say, oh man, come on, we can do better. Oh yeah, I'm doing great. And then after an event. So we have 3 time frames. We have 8 emotional disposition, 8 achievement emotions, and 3 neurological domains. So 8 times 3 times 4, 96. So once I give my client the assessment, I then write a profile that tells them what their dominant positive emotion is, what their dominant negative emotion is, what's their best achievement time frame, and which neurological domain they focus on primarily based on their responses. From there, we work out a plan of action. I usually do not want a client to tell me anything until I've done the assessment. So when a client approaches me, I say, I don't want to be influenced in any way. I just want your numbers. I explain that to them the way I just explained to you. We get the numbers, we set up a session, and then we go over the profile. I ask their feedback. 9 times out of 10, I get tears of joy, or, oh my God, you read my mind, or you're like a palm reader or something, because what's inside of us is going to come out. And these simple little statements are a way to get them out. And I just take them and put them in a numerical value based on my algorithm. From there, we then I then say, what is the main thing that you want me to help you with? And let's say they say, I'm having issues with my significant other. I don't think that they value me anymore. From that point on, I'm coaching. So I'm asking questions, but I'm referring to the results. So let's say I'm working with a young lady who is cognitive. Her dominant positive emotion is joy, and her dominant negative emotion is anxiety. Therefore, you can think through things pretty good, but because your dominant positive emotion is joy, you need a lot of external stimulation. So you have to learn how to find joy within, or how to better interpret joy in your world. And then because of the negative emotion of anxiety, obviously the anxiety is going to come from overthinking things while you're looking for joy in your world. So with a client like that, I do an average of 4 to 6 sessions, and we work on everything that the client finds crucial, but everything is referred back to your social emotional learning profile.
Wow, I am so glad I asked. and I have a great advantage over our audience, which is I'm watching you on Zoom and I'm listening to you, I'm reading your lips, and I'm seeing your animation. So I just want to go over that again for our listeners, because this is radio. So the four ways of taking in information: cognitive, affective, or feeling; motivational, and physiological. Okay. And then the 8 achievement emotions, you're calling it.
Yes.
And then there are 4 negative and 4 positive.
5 negative and 3 positive. I'm sorry.
5 negative and 3 positive. We're in trouble. Okay. So the 5 negative are anxiety,
anger, anxiety, hopelessness, boredom, and shame.
Wow. Anxiety, anger, hopelessness, boredom, and shame.
Yes.
Whoa. And I talk to my clients so much about these emotions. Oh, my word. And the 3 positive are joy,
hope, and pride.
Beautiful.
Except that pride can be a switch hitter, as you know.
Pride can be a what?
A switch hitter. Pride can be positive or negative.
Very, very much so. And I make that point to my clients as well. You know, healthy pride versus the kind of pride that we talk about in the 7 deadly sins.
Yes.
You know, to be prideful, which is a form of grandiosity. And what most people don't know is people walking around so grandiose who talk about how wonderful they are all the time. They're really reacting to shame.
Yes.
And they themselves don't even realize that their grandiosity is coming from a shame base.
Exactly.
So wow. So you put that together for us, that case of the woman who was primarily cognitive, and her positive emotion was joy. So she needed to learn, she needed more external stimuli. And I like how you put that, ways to find the joy within and ways to interpret joy in the world. And I think that that's what you did through your photographs, how you showed, I'm running and I see a beautiful scene. Now I'm going to stop and I'm going to photograph it and I'm going to interpret it. I'm going to try to interpret my feelings in my body into words and what that means to me, seeing beauty in everything.
Yes.
Then the 3 time frames.
Yeah.
So what are they? The past, present, and future?
Before an event, how are you approaching, what is your mindset before you approach an event? Then what is your mindset during the event? And then after the event?
Right.
Yeah, before, during, and after.
That's interesting. I often ask my clients, what is it like waking up in the morning? You know, what are you thinking, feeling? How do you start your day? And we have emotions most people don't realize that are actually patterns.
Yes.
It's not just, what's happening in the moment. It's how you're habitually feeling.
Exactly.
And I love, and I also lecture, as I said to you last week, on the 3-part brain, but I love how you simplify it. The brain stem, just the survival, fight, flight, then the emotional brain, and then the prefrontal lobe, the thinking brain. And my biggest teaching in that, my initial teaching with my students and clients is simple pausing.
Yes.
Right? Simple pausing, because it takes 1,000 times faster for the primitive brain to take in information than the new brain, because that has to process things.
Absolutely.
And processing takes time. It takes time. How do I really think about this? How do I approach this? Yeah. What I hear you doing in your assessing your clients is teaching them how to be witnesses to themselves so that they become from the outside looking in rather than lost in this turbulence of brain fog, lack of awareness, lack of self-reflection, just acting on impulse, but that they become intentional, right? Intentional beings. So would you say that that's so, the idea of becoming a witness to self?
Absolutely, Dr. Duffy. I love the way you use the term intentional. And not only do I do this with my clients, but, in my quote unquote day job, because who can afford not to have one? I am also a public school science teacher. And so I have assessed copious amounts of students, because what I do for the first week of school, I would actually do an SEL week, We're not talking science. We're just going to understand who I am, who you are, and then we're going to have a successful school year. So I have a profile on every single student. So when Johnny gets upset and wants to blurt out profanity, rather than writing a referral, I can say to Johnny, I understand, because your dominant negative emotion is anger, which your dominant positive emotion is hope, and your dominant neurological domain is cognitive. But you are better during an event. Therefore, you just need me. So just reach out. So that's what I use in my day job, but I also use it with my clients because I want my clients to understand, as you said, I am getting a preload on who and how you are before you tell me anything. Because it's so easy for you to sit down and tell me stuff and I give you my opinion. But you will not value my opinion unless I give you a reason to value it. So that's why when clients contact me, I said, no, all I want to know is, are you interested in working with me? This is how I work. This is the assessment first. Then we move forward from there. And they get a complete profile that explains. So just as I explained to you with the young lady, I say to them, because you are cognitive, you're going to think through things. It could be dangerous to overthink, especially if you are anxious. And so then they start listening. And I said, then I ask questions. Give me examples in your everyday life where you've seen that happen. And then you mentioned with how I use it in my book. As I'm running, and then I don't stop. I'm running. I have my camera. In the old days, I had the 33 millimeter that you carry. Now I just have the smartphone and I just take a picture. But I haven't always been, I'm not always joyous and jolly. As you see in the book, I explain times of homelessness and hopelessness. So we go along this whole spectrum of achievement emotions, but we have a dominant one. And if we know that dominant one, then we know who and how we are. And if we're truthful, when I tell my clients, the basis of social emotional learning is truth, self-truth first. Never tell someone what you think they want to hear. Tell them what you are truly about, who you are truly about, and then you will be able to get what you need to get out of that relationship. We talked last week about people acquiring things. Well, in speaking about relationships, people want to acquire relationships, but they think that they can fake their way through it. In the 70s, we used to say, fake it till you make it. It's only going to last, but for so long. And then you're going to say, well, you're not the person that I met. Well, are you? And so I had a couple that I was coaching the other day, and I said, are you? Are you the person that they met? Because if you're not the person that they met, then don't expect them to be the person that you met. And so that's why social emotional learning is about a community. It could be a community of one where you're trying to get to know yourself, have a good relationship with yourself. It could be a community of two where a couple is getting to know and fostering a relationship and enhancing a relationship. Or it could be a community of more than two where we're working for the good of the whole for some concept, organization, family, etc.
Okay. Can I take some of this on, Dr. Marilyn Simmons Bowe?
Yes,
Because, first of all, when you mentioned SEL, I just want to unpack that for people. You're talking about social emotional learning.
Yes.
Okay. And then you talk about the power of self-truth, which I completely agree with. Really not believing our own publicity. And then you use the phrase, don't follow that dictum, fake it till you make it. The thing is, I remember that when I was a teenager and I started to date, and I was a very angry kid. I was a very hurt kid and therefore a very angry kid. And that's the flip-flop of that.
Right.
And I was just being myself with the boys, just talking about where I was, which was miserable. And they weren't the least bit interested in having a second date because I wasn't fun.
Right.
Girls should be fun. So I learned to be fun, right? I learned to present a cardboard self so that I would be popular or sought after. Now, we can leave that there. That in one sense, you can understand that as long as you have a place to go to be real.
Right.
And I think, unfortunately, in our society, there are many people who don't have a place to go to be real. Or if they attempt to be real, like this is, oh my God, this is, I'm angry that my parents hit each other and they hit me or whatever. You shouldn't be angry. We live in a society that is feeling phobic, that we're afraid of certain feelings because, we don't want to be controlled by our feelings, which I totally agree with. Yet we have to know what they are without judgment. Exactly. And most people judge us as in, oh, you shouldn't have any negative feelings. But I like the way you hallmark that each of us has a dominant emotion of the negative variety and of the positive variety, so that if you just know that to be true, then you can go from there, right? You become the witness, you become the more objective witness to yourself. So just comment, because I don't know exactly what I'm saying right now.
Oh, you're perfect, Dr. Duffy. You're right on it. You're absolutely right. Case in point, let's use your experiences as a teenager.
Yeah.
If you, and I do your work with young adults as well, so I can attest that this has happened in today's world with my clients. But as a teenager, if you had come to me and you had an assessment, then you sit down with the young man. Boys are everywhere except focused. So you say, I know you're looking for someone, to have a good time, but I am that person, but I want you to know the true me, because there may be times when you may see another side of me that you're not sure of. So I had this assessment, and the assessment says I'm a thinker. The assessment says I'm a warrior. And the assessment says that I need compliments, using the example earlier about cognitive anxiety and joy. So at the same time, there are going to be times when I am not going to believe you because of experiences that I've had. Unfortunately, we live in a world where teenage boys are not going to be in tune with that cognitively. So there has to be other ways other than presenting the cardboard self. So what I tell my young clients is, do you want truth? If you want truth, be willing to listen. Then you can say, I listened. I understand where you're coming from. Unfortunately, at this point in my life, I don't think that I can take it on. If we can get that truth, it would be great. But when we go on social media and we read articles and we see terms like ghosting, and then like, why ghost someone when you can just come to Dr. Marilyn and throw a plug in there and figure out how to deal with that. And this is when people say to me, well, why aren't you on billboards, or why aren't you shouting this from the rooftops? Well, first of all, that takes a financial commitment that someone like me doesn't have. And second of all, I work within the spaces that I find myself and hope that it has a ripple effect outwards. But yeah, to verify what you were saying and using your example, that's what it takes. It takes someone entering a relationship who is willing to accept truth. And I find that to be the case with a lot of my clients. I find this to be the case with a lot of my clients, where one part of the couple, one half of the couple, I don't like to say half because I think people are complete in themselves. So one of the individuals wants to accept truth and the other one doesn't. One wants to just say, let's just have a good life and snow everything over and put on this pretense. And then when things crash, and then to quickly speak on your point about society tells you to, don't show any negative feelings. Unfortunately, we see that manifesting in society where people are now showing negative feelings in very negative ways because they're not allowed to be expressive.
That is so true. We do have to close, but unfortunately, you have to come on again, Dr. Marilyn Simmons Bowe. You are an author of Motivation by the Mile. And how can people access you for coaching?
At my website, drmarilynsimmons.com. That's drmarilynsimmons.com.
Well, it has been such a pleasure meeting you. I hope we can meet again. And this is Dr. Duffy Spencer saying goodbye for now and wishing you great relationships.